I think she's coming back to make another nest right here.
Yeah, I got its tail!
For years, Troy Landry was the face of the swamp, the fearless gator hunter who kept us on the edge of our seats. But now, Troy Landry's vanishing act has fans asking one burning question. What happened? Was it exhaustion? A hidden feud? Or a tragedy so devastating it forced him off-screen? The truth is darker than the murky waters he once ruled. Moreover, one thing's clear. The swamp isn't the same without him. So why did he leave? And will he ever come back? Let's find out all the queries in today's video.
Going good, we're having so much trouble, and we're not catching the big one, and I can't figure it out.
Troy never planned on stardom. He didn't set out to become a TV icon. It all began as a simple way to keep the lights on and food on the table. But what started as just another hunting season exploded into a cultural phenomenon. When Swamp People premiered on the History Channel on August 27, 2010, it pulled in over 3 million viewers, and it hasn't slowed down since. 15 seasons later, fans are still glued to the screen. But why the Atchafalaya Swamp? Why not another part of the bayou? Was it because of family roots, or perhaps strict filming laws? Speculation ran wild for years. Eventually, the truth surfaced. Troy Landry was born on June 6, 1960, in Pierre Part, Louisiana, a tight-knit town nestled deep in the swamp's shadow. But this wasn't just his birthplace. It was his legacy. Troy didn't just learn the trade, he lived it. His family had been hunting gators for 5 generations. Imagine growing up in a house where tracking, trapping, and tagging alligators wasn't just normal. It was necessary. There were no bedtime stories. There were real stories about survival, danger, and bloodlines soaked in the swamp's waters. From a young age, Troy was in the thick of it. While other kids played catch, he learned how to read the ripples of dark water. He knew when to pull the trigger, and more importantly, when not to. He studied the rhythms of the swamp like a language only a few could ever understand. Is it any wonder he earned the title King of the Swamp? Behind his rugged reputation is a lifetime of calculated risks and quiet victories. Unlike thrill-seeking hunters who chase the biggest bite for the flashiest scene, Troy's hunts are built on precision. He knows how to wait, how to read the signs, how to stay alive. His parents, Duffy and Myrtle Landry, often appeared on the show, retired but never far from the action. When Troy needed insight, they were there, not just for strategy, but for something more powerful: memory, legacy, connection. Watching them, it was clear this wasn't just a business, it was a bond. And while the swamp can be unforgiving, Troy built more than just a name there. He built a life, balancing danger with discipline, blending old-school wisdom with sharp instincts, and even running a successful seafood distribution company on the side. The man doesn't just hunt gators, he understands them. What makes Troy different? Maybe it's his roots. It could be his resilience. Or maybe, just maybe, it's the swamp itself, calling him back, season after season. The Landry legacy extends far beyond TV ratings and fan fame. In truth, they've become quiet guardians of Louisiana's swamps. For decades, the family has worked to regulate the alligator population in the vast Louisiana River Basin, not for glory, but for balance. Why? Because when predators grow unchecked, ecosystems crumble. And when traditions fade, a way of life vanishes. The Landrys didn't just hunt, they protected. They ensured the gators never tipped the scales, keeping the animals wild, but never a threat. So when cameras appeared in the year 2010, it wasn't a performance. It was a snapshot of survival. At first, it looked like just another gator season. Troy and his sons, Jacob and Chase, were preparing for the annual 60-day hunt across the east and west zones. But what happened next wasn't part of any plan. Swamp people turned their everyday grind into something extraordinary. What was once a seasonal hustle transformed into a national spectacle. But the spotlight wasn't always kind. Initially, Troy didn't trust the cameras. Who would? He was a swamp-born hunter, raised in silence and shadows, not in front of booming microphones and trailing camera crews. But behind his hesitation was something deeper. Fear. Not of failure, but of exposing the delicate balance his family had fought generations to keep. After the 2008 recession, everything changed. Costs skyrocketed. Gator tags didn't stretch as far. The business, which had once been steady, began to bleed. And just as the Landrys faced an uncertain future, swamp people offered a lifeline. Troy has since admitted that if it weren't for the show's timing, their family business might not have survived the year. Still, not everything came easy. With fame came pressure. With money came questions. Was he still hunting for tradition or television? But Troy never strayed. He stayed rooted in the same mud he grew up in, turning his rare exposure into quiet expansion. Today, while some see him as a star, others recognize him as something more, a provider. Even after 15 seasons, Troy keeps the wheels turning. He promotes gear and sponsors, but always with the intent to fund the very life that shaped him. He's also behind Cranking Crabs, a crawfish business pulling in a staggering £6 million annually, a number that leaves even seasoned fishermen stunned. And yet, through all this, Troy never traded authenticity for acclaim. He still believes what he always did. You don't learn to hunt gators, you're born into it. It's in his reflexes, his blood, his boots. What makes him the king of the swamp? Is it the revenue, the recognition? Or is it his unmatched, instinctive knowledge of the swamp, of its rhythms, its prey, its predators? Maybe it's none of that. Troy Landry doesn't just live in the swamp. He breathes it, heart and soul. He's not just a hunter. He's a trailblazer. A man whose name is now synonymous with gator country. But what truly sets him apart? Is it his success? Or something more primal, like his refusal to let tradition die? With every cast of the line and every pull of the trigger, Troy educates millions, quietly, powerfully, on what ethical, responsible hunting looks like. He doesn't hunt for the thrill. He hunts with respect. For him, it's never been about domination. It's about balance. He follows the rules, sticks to Louisiana's 30-day legal limit, honors the land, protect the animals. And yet, there's no denying his raw skill. One particular day left jaws dropped, 82 alligators caught in a single run. Most seasoned hunters are lucky to tag 40. That day, Troy doubled it. Fans couldn't believe it. Some were amazed, others worried. Could one man survive that kind of chaos? It wasn't just a lucky streak. It was mastery. And when the dust settled, his only injury? A single gator bite. One small scar from a day that could have ended in disaster. But while the world applauded his record-breaking catch, something else was stirring behind the scenes. Something far more personal. Was everything all right at home? Troy has never made a spectacle of his private life. But if you listen closely, it's clear. Family is the backbone of everything he does. He's been married to Bonita since 1981, a powerhouse woman in her own right. She's not just a gospel singer with songs like "Victory Belongs to Jesus" and "I Shall Wear a Crown." She's also a Stellar Award winner, a Grammy nominee, and a full-time high school educator. And sometimes, just for the thrill, She joins Troy on a hunt. Imagine that. A music star in the swamp, setting gator lines like she was born to do it. Bonita's talents don't stop there. She works behind the scenes, too, handling publicity for the History Channel, and, as Troy once shared, she's the silent genius behind his polished red carpet looks. Whenever fans compliment his style, Troy shrugs with a grin and credits his wife. Fashion? That's all Bonita. But one detail often gets lost in the noise: Troy's bond with his stepson, Brandon. Although the media only caught wind of it later, Brandon had been part of Troy's life long before the cameras arrived. Blood or not, Troy sees him as his own. Family isn't always about biology. Sometimes it's about the years spent shoulder to shoulder, working the swamp, sharing the weight. If you ever step inside Troy Landry's home, one of the rare few allowed, you'll see it for yourself. This isn't a man chasing fame. This is a man living out a legacy. Every mount on the wall, every photo, every muddy boot by the door, it all tells the story of a man who never left his roots, even when the world was watching. Apart from this, when you walk into Troy Landry's home, it doesn't feel like a house. It feels like a living tribute to the swamp. One visitor once shared a memory that stuck with fans. Being handed the head of an 11-foot alligator, its weight real, its teeth sharp, its story unforgettable. In another room, over 14 white-tailed deer heads lined the wall, preserved with such care they almost looked alive. It wasn't a trophy room, it was a memory room. Troy and Bonita proudly call it their dream house, and for good reason. They spent over 3 decades in a trailer, through storms, heat, and lean hunting seasons, waiting for the day they could finally build something of their own. Bonita had only one request: wood everywhere, cypress walls, wooden beams, and warm tones. No sheetrock, just nature, shaped into shelter. And Troy? He had one dream, too: 2 kitchens, not out of luxury but necessity. He loved to cook. But when you're married to a gospel-singing, Grammy-nominated, deer-hunting Louisiana woman who's also a schoolteacher and publicist, you can be sure she wants her kitchen untouched. Now, he had his own. He could fry, smoke, boil, and sear without watching where the grease splattered. Their dream finally came true. And with it came space. Enough to host their 3 sons, their grandkids, and half the swamp if needed. But it isn't just blood family that fills the home. Fans have noticed a notable change in the Swamp People crew over the years. The camera may show gators, but what keeps people watching? The connections, the blurred lines between co-workers and kin, the way the crew moves like a tribe, joking one moment, hauling monsters the next. You don't just film scenes like that, you live them. And then there's Pickle Wheat, the young sharpshooter who calls Troy her mentor. Together, they've delivered some of the show's most memorable moments, like the time their boat nearly tipped over from laughing too hard mid-hunt. It was chaos, it was hilarious, and it was real. Would the show have lasted this long without that kind of bond? Probably not. Viewers tune in for gators, but they stay for the people. Still, not every moment is lighthearted. Bonita and Troy once revealed that even outside the hunting season, gators sometimes wander onto their land to bask in the sun. For most folks, a reptile the size of a canoe creeping through the yard would be a nightmare. But for the Landrys, it's just Tuesday. Unless the gators get too bold, they let them be. After all, what's a swamp without a few surprises? But while the cameras captured the laughter, the sweat, and the catches, something darker occasionally loomed behind the scenes. Troy hasn't had it easy. Hunting is a dangerous business. Over the years, he has dealt with his share of injuries, close calls, pain that doesn't always make it to the screen. But he's always come back, bruised maybe, but not broken. Because the truth is, no matter how perfect things look, the swamp has a way of testing even the toughest. What could go wrong when everything seems to be going right? That's the question Troy Landry lives with every time he steps into the boat. People called him the king of the swamp, and for years he lived like one. Strong, fearless, and seemingly invincible, Troy Landry had dodged injuries most hunters couldn't imagine surviving. Cuts, bites, close calls, he handled them all with the calm of a man who had spent a lifetime taming wild things. To fans, he became larger than life, unstoppable, untouchable, unshaken. But what happens when the threat isn't a gator? At the height of his fame, just as Swamp People was gearing up for its record-breaking 15th season, rumors began to spread. Whispers online turned into memorials. Farewell posts flooded social media. Some fans even lit candles. Has Troy Landry passed away? The story spread like wildfire. The heartbreak was instant. But it wasn't true. Troy was still alive, but something was wrong. Soon his son Jacob Landry stepped forward and confirmed what many feared. Troy had been diagnosed with prostate cancer. The rumor of his death had been false, but the truth was no less sobering. He had undergone surgery, and the journey to recovery had already begun. Jacob, in a heartfelt update, reassured everyone that the surgery had gone well. Troy was getting stronger by the day. The king of the swamp wasn't down for long. Still, the news shook his loyal audience. Fans poured in with messages, prayers, survival stories, and recovery tips. Many reminded him that God had brought him this far and would carry him the rest of the way. By May, Jacob returned to social media to share the news that gave everyone a reason to breathe again. Troy's lab results came back clear. He was healing. He was steady. He was coming back. But maybe the shock of those death rumors hit so hard because, over the years, fans had already experienced real loss in the Swamp People family. The grief wasn't new. It had history. Back in 2012, just 3 seasons into the series, fans were hit with their first gut punch. Mitchell Gist, one of the show's beloved figures, died suddenly while working on his boat in the Bell River. He was just 48 years old. One moment, he was alive. The next, he was gone. No warning, no explanation, just silence. 2 years later, in 2014, the heartbreak returned, this time not for a man, but for a dog. Tyler, Mitchell's loyal hound, passed from congestive heart failure. Known on set as the Swamp Dog, Tyler was more than a pet. He was a protector. He had stood between crew members and danger more times than anyone could count. His absence was so deeply felt that no dog has quite filled the space he left behind since. And just when it seemed the crew had endured enough sorrow, fans were forced to mourn again. Another familiar face, one that had been there from the very first episode and continued through the 3rd and 6th seasons, was lost. His name, Randy Edwards. A name that still stirs grief among longtime followers of the show. In the world of Swamp People, danger doesn't just lurk in the water. It circles quietly around the lives of those brave enough to live off the land. And no matter how seasoned or skilled, they are never truly beyond its reach. Randy Edwards may have passed in September of 2018, but for longtime Swamp People fans, his name still stirs emotion. At just 35 years old, he died in a tragic car crash, gone in an instant. The pain of losing a familiar face from the early seasons still weighs heavy. He was the son of Junior and Teresa Edwards, and for viewers, he was more than a cast member. he was family. The ripple of grief was deep. So when false rumors began spreading online about Troy Landry's death not long ago, fans panicked. Obituaries were posted, tributes written. For many, it felt like losing a part of their own lives. After all, they'd watched Troy for over a decade, year after year, episode after episode. Could it be true? Was the king of the swamp gone? Thankfully, it wasn't. But the truth still struck a chord. Troy had been diagnosed with prostate cancer. The strength he once showed in the swamp was now being tested in a hospital room. Would he recover? Would the show go on? Would the Landry family bounce back again? For weeks, fans waited. Then came the announcement they'd been hoping for. A new season. Season 15. The title? Cruel Summer. Fitting, given the rumors, the fear, and the battle Troy had just survived. Ultimately, that's why, even after health scares and heartbreak, the world still tunes in. Because Troy isn't just fighting gators, he's fighting for something greater: legacy, tradition, and the promise that no matter how wild the swamp gets, the Landrys will always find a way. In the end, it's not just the alligators that make this story compelling, it's the man who's still standing after wrestling them for a lifetime. Well, what are your views about him? And also make sure to subscribe to the channel.